Hey everyone, so today I want to share a few reflections on the immortal life of Henrietta Lacks. It was a book that stayed with me long after I finished reading it. Henrietta's life and her suffering and her legacy raised deep questions about ethics and dignity and the value of every human life. And the five questions I've chosen, in addition to the two that I'll be elaborating on, will be posted with this video. Okay, so for question one, why does Sadie think Henrietta hesitated before seeing a doctor? First, Sadie believed Henrietta hesitated before seeing a doctor because she feared what might happen once she entered the medical system, and rightfully so. When I think about that, I totally understand it. Henrietta lived during a time when Black patients were often dismissed, overlooked, or exploited, especially in public hospitals, and her hesitation wasn't her being naive. It was wisdom born from experience, and she knew the cost of being vulnerable in an institution that didn't always treat people like her with care. Skloot uses vivid imagery and details to describe Henrietta's childhood in Clover. Locate a passage that you found particularly effective or memorable and explain why you selected it. Okay, so one passage describing Henrietta's childhood in Clover really stayed with me. Rebecca Skloot, the author, she paints this picture of Henrietta picking tobacco under a punishing sun, her back burning, yet she still finds small moments of joy. I chose this because it captures the complexity of her spirit, and it reminds us that she wasn't defined by struggle alone. She was defined by her resilience and this ability to move through hardship without losing her warmth or her sense of self is impeccable. It's amazing, actually. That image of her smiling through labor told me more about her strength than any scientific detail could ever do. Compare the medical terms describing Elsie's condition with the terms used by Henrietta's friends and family. What are the connotations of the two sets of terms? Okay, so Elsie, Days and Henrietta's daughter, the way her condition was described, it reveals a powerful contrast between the medical world and her family. While doctors use clinical labels such as mental retardation, epileptic, low IQ, or even feeble-minded, which were cold, reductive terms that stripped Elsie down to like a diagnosis. Her family, on the other hand, described her as simple, touched, or different. Language filled with gentleness and affection, even though it sounds condescending to folks that are Southern. But it had a huge term. It had a huge term of endearment behind it because they loved her. These words came from care, not judgment, and the connotations are worlds apart. The medical terms distance her, while the family's terms brought her closer. And it shows how institutions can reduce a person down to symptoms while loved ones see a whole living soul. How did doctors justify using patients in public hospital wards as medical research subjects without obtaining their consent or offering them financial compensation? Do you agree or disagree with their reasoning? Explain your answer. Okay, so the justification doctors gave for using poor patients, often Black patients, in public wards as research subjects without their consent still unsettles me. It's 2025. They argued that these patients would not fully understand medical concepts, simple medical concepts at that. So taking their cells or performing procedures without consent was acceptable to them for the advancement of science. And to me, that reasoning is deeply flawed. No level of poverty or lack of education removes a person's right to autonomy over their own body. And reading this not only was upsetting, but it made me reflect on Henrietta's experience, but also the countless other bodies who became sites of experimentation without acknowledgement or respect. It's completely asinine. Moving along, what was Henrietta's final request? What does this request tell you about her? Okay, this was my favorite and last prompt that I chose. Henrietta's last request was simple. She wanted her family, especially her children, to be taken care of. That request speaks volumes to the person she was. Even as cancer tore through her body, And even as her world closed around her, her thoughts were not on herself. They clearly were on her babies, her loved ones, the future that they would face without her. And it reveals her humanity, her tenderness, and her unshakable maternal nature. You know, Henrietta's final act was an act of love, and to me, that is her truest legacy. In conclusion, in the end, The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks is more than just a story about scientific discovery. It's a story about a woman who was real, who was loving, vulnerable, and strong. She was somebody's mother, whose life and body were taken far beyond her control. But her spirit and maternal heart remain unforgettable. Thank you, everyone.